welcome Mark Adams.
Hi guys.
Why do you have to sit so far away?
Oh, sorry dude, sorry. Yeah, I'm not going to speak to you because of what you said. Yeah, let's do it.
We have had a last minute format change, and we have decided to do a live Q&A. And for the second half, we're going to take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions for Mark, please, feel free to raise your hand, and he's here to answer whatever it is that you want to ask. Okay, so my first question. SVP of Innovation, walk me through your regular, but like a Wednesday.
Usually I wake up, I'm pretty hungover, drink some coffee. No, and basically, Vice is, what's interesting about Vice is it started as a magazine, literally like tiny little magazine, not a big thing. And the way it kind of cut through, the way it tried to get people to pay attention was by finding the stories that no one else was talking about. So, and this is so simple, right? If you think about it, like the baby boomers have had, no disrespect to the baby boomers, they've done a great job, but they've built a media ecosystem in a way that they cannot imagine it working any other way. Like, it's just, that's the way it is, right? News has to be an anchor person saying, downstairs there is a bomb and this has happened, and we just started saying, well, what if you just threw a kid into the middle of that situation with a camera on his head and saw what was actually happening? And what was amazing was that we were nothing, absolutely nothing. And we sent a bunch of guys to Iraq, to Baghdad. And just because we were there without an agenda, we weren't staying in the Hilton. So when you come out of Baghdad airport, I haven't been, so I'm told. You've got two options. If you come out of Baghdad airport and you turn left, you go to the press convoy, there's an armed guard, CNN, Fox, CNBC, Universal, they're all there, right? And then they all go to the same hotel, eat lunch together, talk about stuff, then stand on their balconies at night and say, behind me you can see bombs going off, right? If you come out and you don't have enough money to do that, and you're not well respected, you turn right, and there's just a bunch of cars, and you go, what the hell are we going to do? And that is what we had to do, because we were not a respected organisation. So what we would do is go, can anybody speak a bit of English? Hello, can we pay you some money? Can we live with you for a little bit? And then what we found was that we would end up getting the story that was such a more deep and human and an interesting story. So we, when we went to Baghdad, we found the story of this, we found, just randomly, we didn't go there with this plan, we found this heavy metal band. And we made this film called Heavy Metal in Baghdad. And if you think about war reporting, right, think about like serious organizations, right? So, I'm sorry for whoever I've offended. While we're on this subject, by the way, Vice is the young kids, right? And it does beg the question, where are the adults, right? Brexit, Trump, the world in free fall economically. So we're like, oh, you're the young ones, they're there. Really? Oh, so you're the adults? Is that right? I don't think that's necessarily valid, and I don't think you've actually earned that respect. So what happened was we were kind of coming at it with just this arrogance, right? So we started to say, we found these kids that were talking about rock music in Baghdad, and we thought, I think that's going to resonate because, American kids in the deep Midwest are going to go, oh my God, these guys like Metallica just like me. And suddenly, we had made this piece of content that humanized the people that were going through this shock and awe blitz that Rumsfeld was just launching on them every night. And suddenly you realize, my God, these people have the same passions as me. They're exactly the same. And that humanized war reporting in a way that I don't think anyone's really ever done. But because it was so unplanned, we didn't even know how it happened. And the same thing happened when we went to Afghanistan. We went to Afghanistan, again, we turned right instead of left. We had to go and just live with some dude that had lived in this village. And after 5 or 6 days, someone actually talked to us. After 10 days of living there, we were like helping people carry stuff. After 2 weeks, someone came up and said, would you like to know why I want to be a suicide bomber? And how else would you get that story? Because you have to immerse yourself. There was one, and this isn't necessarily something that, it's been controversial for us, but we embedded with ISIS for 2 weeks. So in the middle of all this, everyone was like, how dare you go and spend time with them? And we said, is it not of interest and in the public interest for people to know what is making these people tick? Or do we just pretend it's Star Wars and there's the dark side and the light side, right? Because that's what Fox News do. But they're the adults, So that was basically our approach. And so essentially what we started to do is we took that same immersion into YouTube. And YouTube said, keep it short, keep it funny. Right? And you've been told this, if you were working in the world of brands, you've been told, young people have an attention span that's shorter than a goldfish. Yeah, sure, if it's bad, they do. But if you tell them a story that's absolutely fascinating from a point of view that they've never seen before, they'll watch a 45-minute documentary and then ask for more. So we started to make this stuff that wasn't short and it wasn't necessarily funny. And our North Korea video, for example, now, because North Korea's back in the news again, we're getting like 1 million hits a week on that video again. Because it's 45 minutes long, we snuck a camera into North Korea and basically ran around, chased. And it's fascinating because every other news organisation was like, how the hell did you do that? And it's just a commitment to saying we've got to go there and be there. And that was the Vice mentality. That was always what we did.
Isn't that great? Can you tell me a bit more? I'm a huge fan of your HBO show and your daily newscast as well. Can you tell me a bit more about that relationship? HBO clearly is seen as a higher echelon of networks. They, don't really mess with your creative control. The budgets are, generous. So can you just, expand a bit more on that relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, for us, there were little moments along the way when you go, maybe we're doing it right. And, Vice has gone from this magazine to being this, $4.5 billion business now. So to give you an idea, BuzzFeed's a $1.5 billion business. So there's a $3 billion difference between us and the next guy. And we sometimes have to ask ourselves why that is. And I think that it's the difference between being a publisher and being a media brand. One is about, and no disrespect to anyone that does this, and full credit to them actually, if you take a bunch of GIFs from old 80s films and make a 21-point list about why they're so fun now and relevant to you, and it's all, quite fun, don't expect people to miss you if you stop doing that. Whereas what we always do is, what would make people miss us if we were gone? And we had to be hard at one moment and ask ourselves, is what we're doing real enough and important enough and honest enough and scarce enough that if we stopped tomorrow, people would be like, that's a real shame. And so we essentially started to think, who are the best players in that space? Who are the other people that if they disappeared, you'd be like, oh man. And obviously HBO. So we started to talk to them and we found this mutual respect, I think. And then they were looking for a daily news show. And we were starting to move into news, and they liked the way that, as I explained, we were coming at it, and the approach that we don't have an anchor man speaking about anything, we just show it, and there's no voice of God saying, and then this happened, And they loved that. They really thought that was what the format could be more interesting as a format. And so we kind of shot a lot of stuff, and they really liked it, and then, that was a huge deal. And it was amazing because it gets you off the crack. And we just heard the other session before, was about Facebook and Google owning 78% of the digital ecosystem dollars now, right? So that, if your business is making something that you didn't make because it's just someone else's GIF, and then being funny about it and sticking it up with a cool tagline and hoping people will click on it, and then of course you have to use distribution on Facebook to get that, you're basically a crack addict because it's really hard to build a business like that. Whereas our approach was everything that we show is made by us. It's our intellectual property. And then that means we can go to Vodafone in India and say, look, for a serious amount of money, we'll license this content to you because data usage on phones is how you're going to make money, and it will stop churn so that young people don't leave you and go to Verizon or whatever. But you have to own the content, and it's the long way round. It's so much harder. And when we work with brands, which is really what my side of the world is, that's the same thing. We say, you could be, it could be easy. We could build you some content, right? And we could build you a little, whatever the gimmick is, right? Whatever the new, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like, it could be, every brand wants the new thing, right? So it's 360 video, and then it's augmented reality, virtual reality, right? And it's like I was saying in the session before, it's like little kids playing football. The ball goes over there, all the brands go over there, because everyone needs a 360 video now, and then the ball goes over there, and then suddenly there's 100 360 video briefs. And so what we always say to them is, honestly, think about the story first, and then think about the format we want to extend that story into. And that is our core, and it's a long way around. It's not an easy answer. It's like a kind of more strategic, harder set of questions, but it always pays off. And the way that we ended up working with HBO has made it really nice for us. We now can say, I'm not saying we don't say no to a lot of brands, but we do say no to brands, because HBO gave us $500 million for that deal, right? It takes a lot of time and effort to make $500 million in 1 year out of some brands, right? So every time we go and license our content to a mobile provider or a TV deal, or do a deal with the Times of India or whatever, we get to the point where we're not just going, we'll do anything you want. And if you ask me, the biggest problem about the agency world now, and I respect the agency world tremendously, but the biggest problem is that's their money, right? So when Pepsi say to their in-house agency, we want you to make this absolute disaster, right? No one has Nicholas Nassim Taleb wrote this book called The Black Swan, and I'm going to swear, but in a nice way. He said that you need to have what's called FU money. FU money is what makes you able to say no. Because if you don't have that and you're desperate, you have to say yes to everything. And then you have to do what the client says, even if it's going to be a bad decision. And you know it's going to be bad, but your job is to sit there and nod and say, as long as you pay me, I'll do what you say. And in the old days, if you look at Mad Men and the old Madison Avenue era, when creative agencies were really powerful, when David Ogilvy was running around building brands, and they were really powerful. You know why? It's because they would turn to clients and say, that's a bad idea. You've been thinking about it from your product-centric, boardroom-first mentality, and we're here to tell you that no one in the world apart from you is interested in that. And with the FU money that we've got from these other deals, we're now able to say to brands, honestly, at the risk of losing you as a client, this is a bad idea. And this brief is going to produce a monster. It's going to produce a terrible result. It's going to cost you lots of money. So we strongly recommend you do not do this. And that type of strategic, unbiased decision-making has helped us. And ironically, of course, now, massive brands, Unilever, UBS, are all coming to us saying, we love the fact you tell us no. So that's kind of an interesting thing, right? As soon as you say no, and you're not on the crack of going, I'll do anything, just give me some more money, I've got quarterly earnings, you can start to say, well, honestly, like strategically, I'm going to be unbiased and tell you that this is a bad idea. And then suddenly the brands are starting to queue up. It's kind of interesting.
So earlier today we talked about transmedia, being able to reach the customer, consumer, your audience through Snap, Facebook, WordPress, you name it. And you guys are on TV, you have your website, which how many likes on Facebook do you guys have? 15, 20 million?
Yeah.
Something like that? So what would you say is makes your approach so entertaining and engaging for the person that reads that and says, that's really cool, I'm going to comment, I'm going to engage, I'm going to share, and through all of this media landscape. How can you be so successful at all of them?
I've thought about this myself, and if you speak to the people that are a lot smarter than me, like our founders, always had one idea that ran through the business. And honestly, this is it. You can cut the world in two by this. If you work at a brand, you work at an agency, you've got your own startup, whatever the stuff we were talking about next door earlier, it really just comes down to what we were saying earlier, which is, if you think people trust anyone right now, good luck. Because you are a nice person, but you are not paying attention. And if you think that trust is at an all-time global low and probably going to get lower, you're probably going to be able to be very successful or at least have a chance. The word of the year last year was post-truth, the Oxford English Dictionary word of the year, right? We are living in a post-truth society. This is not about Gen Z or millennials or anything. It's about a new consumer mindset that touches everyone, regardless of their age. That means that they are savvy, sophisticated consumers of information, and they know for a fact that most of it is not worth trusting, isn't worthy of trust. You know, from the family unit falling apart, 45% divorce rate, to Donald Trump being the president of the United States of America. If you trust people right now, you are a much more open human being than any of us, I'm sure. So therefore, you come to the point, if you trust brands, you need your head checked, right? So if you're sitting in a brand, in a boardroom, or you're sitting in an agency, in a boardroom, and you're coming with this straight up assumption that people do trust brands, good luck. Because whatever you're about to make, if you haven't accounted for the fact that already people's barriers are so... I mean, there's never been a bigger boycott in the history of planet Earth than ad blocking. Ad blocking, if you added up the numbers of people that use ad blocker now, it's the greatest boycott of anything that's ever happened in the world ever. Nobody has en masse boycotted any other thing as much as they now boycott ad blocking, and it's going up every year. So ask yourself, am I producing anything that has, I'm creating supply, expensive supply, where there is not just no demand, but a negative demand for it. That's bad business. So our approach is to say, can we produce something where we add value to a tribe, a conversation? Can we genuinely earn our way into the conversation so that the brand can actually say, you know what, we pushed culture forward somehow. We did something. And I think that the bit of work that started that was Intel. Intel came to us, you know, basically they had massive recognition, brand recognition. Everybody knew, da-da-da-ding. But when you asked them, what is it? 30% of young people thought it was a washing machine. Because it was that swirl, right? Da-da-da-ding. And by the way, this is Byron Sharp, how brands grow. Brands have spent so much time putting their logo everywhere and sponsoring stuff. But honestly, when you ask consumers, what is it? They don't know. They're like, honestly, I don't know. And then when you ask them, would you care if it didn't exist? Of course, the answer is no. I don't know what it is, so of course I don't care if it didn't exist. So now, you have to build distinct memory structures that are deeper. And so what we did every single time was come back to stories. Stories are the technology, the tool that have built distinct memory structures forever. And I don't mean content. The contents of this is content. It's like my little cousin, so cute, like you say, Jake, tell us a joke. And he'll say, because he doesn't understand what a joke is, he'll say, how do you get an elephant to go into a washing machine? Or I'm just making this up, and you say, I don't know, Jake, how do you do it? He says, just shove him in there, shove him in. But it's funny, but it's not a joke, right? And likewise, brands are making content, but the content is not a story. So if it's not a story, it wouldn't live for 5 minutes in a Netflix boardroom, and it wouldn't live for 5 minutes in a Vice boardroom. And so we apply the same thing for the brands that we work with. When UBS comes to us and say, we want to make a wealth management platform that talks about more than just wealth, we say, well, okay, if you're serious about that, we're going to find amazing stories, and we don't mean content. And that is the difference, I think. And that's why I think we've been very successful with brands, because they've actually gone, you know, our creative director, Spike Jones, who's an Oscar-winning director, right? So he's like, he came to us and said, guys, you guys make content, and you've got the right lens on the camera, but you don't know how to tell a story to save your life. And we were like, what do you mean? It's just put the camera on and then you get the right lens. And he was like, no, that's content creation. Storytelling is a completely different craft. And then he took us through 12 stages of the story, hero's journey, all the different forms of storytelling, went to all of our offices and turned our content creators into storytellers. And then the business just went, and all the brand work we started doing went, and that was the moment.
Great. So, innovation. I mean, such a buzzword, isn't it? It's up there with data, I would say. What do you guys think? Innovation and data, biggest buzzwords in the tech world right now? So, how are you guys identifying where to go next? Is there a roadmap, or do you guys perhaps don't even work that way? Is there something that you're thinking, yeah, that's the way we should go forward? This is the company where I want my content to be delivered by, the channel, or do you think what the media landscape that we have at the moment is going to hold up in, let's say, 5 years' time?
This is a controversial thing to say. I haven't smoked weed for a long time. But if you've ever done it, it makes you just kind of see things again for the first time, let's just say, right? I'm going to get arrested in a minute. If you look again at the media landscape, as if you were looking at it for the first time, imagine you were a Martian and you came down and you looked at, I'm just making this up, football, soccer, right? Sports, all sports. Let's just talk about sports media because it's huge, right? And it's keeping TV alive for now. Until Facebook buy the rights to the World Cup or something and stream it live, because they probably will. And then they'll still say they're not a media company. If you looked at sports media again, you would watch it and you would go, the commentator is talking about how many times that guy has kicked the ball versus how many times that guy has kicked the ball versus how many times that person has done this. It's just a sea of stats, right? And he's done this, and he came on last season, he kicked it even more times, and he's run this far. Well, sports is unbelievably fascinating, and yet sports media is dire. It's an absolute wafer-thin, dire experience. Look at financial media. Financial media is deliberately written on pink paper so that normal people cannot understand a word it says, right? There are real geniuses sitting in here, and I bet you they don't know what APR means, right? And that's deliberate because language games are designed to keep people out. And what we're doing is going around. This is if you want to build a $4.5 billion business, here it is. By the way, if you have a better idea for a business, come to me at the end. I will find us the money and we will start it tonight, right? But as far as I'm aware, this is the best business idea I've ever heard. Once you accept and you look again at media right now, you realize it is Victorian era shallow. It is diabolically shallow. Everything from news, we talked about that already, to sports, to financial media, to health. Google anything about health and you've got instantly, you will have cancer, right? It's like, I've got a headache, you've got cancer of the brain, right? Google like, I've got a sore toe, cancer, right? You shouldn't eat kale, you should eat kale. What the hell are we supposed to think? Every type of media is a disaster. So all we do is take the fact that the core USP of Vice is trust and move into the next sector. Started with news. Bring it, make it more trusted. How do we make this more trusted? Apply that. Boom. Biggest growth of any media company on the web for news. Next one, sports. Sports is boring as hell. Has anyone here a boxer? No, me neither. Has anyone here seen the film Rocky? Right, good film, right? Do you know why? Because it's 95% storytelling and 5% boxing. Right? That's what sports media couldn't ever get its head around. That there was stories to be told. I want to know what Ronaldo's relationship with his father was like for him to be such an absolute idiot. Right? And that's a story. But sports media couldn't get its head around the idea that that would be interesting to people. So suddenly we come in and go, well, why don't we tell the story of this gay rugby player who came out to his teammates and people go, oh my God, Vice is amazing. Well, it was pretty obvious actually. You find the story, not the fact. And then you go to financial media and you say, young people don't understand money and they need to. And they're being completely hoodwinked and no one's helping them. And we say, okay, and then we go to health and we do the same thing. And then we go to brands and help them do it. It's that simple.
So you would say the whole industry needs to be reimagined, essentially?
It's a cakewalk. It's a massacre. I'm not even joking. Like, if you are thinking about what to do in your life, there's many more room, there's room for another 1,000 companies like us doing this, because everyone right now has got it so backwards. I fundamentally believe that, and there will be a bloodbath in media in the next 10 years. Bloodbath.
Okay. Well, could we please give a round of applause to Mark?
Thanks, guys.
We have such a diverse audience here that I want to have an open floor and take some questions. So, hands up, questions, anybody? You have an open floor. Quick and easy.
Hi, I was at your previous session just now. I came very curious to know the 12 points of storytelling, but I didn't hear it. Could you just summarize it very quickly? Thank you very much.
Sorry, did you say summarize just storytelling?
Yeah, the 12 points. You said you were going to tell us what the 12 points of storytelling.
I promised I would and I forgot. Okay, so there's a brilliant book. Basically, the biggest media company in the world is Disney. Disney is a genius, right? Do Disney own the rights to The Little Mermaid? No. Cat lady's like, no, they don't. So what I'm saying is, this front row here, we could form a company together now, and we could make a film called The Little Mermaid. Absolutely, we could do it. And no one could sue us, because it's public domain intellectual property. No one's allowed it, right? You could, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, all the Disney films, right? They are not intellectual property. So they don't own it, but they basically own it. And the reason they basically own it is because they have made the ultimate version of that story. And then they get to exploit that, right? So it's intellectual property, and then you exploit the commercial results. And they basically run everything through. And this is not a template, it's just a way of taking anything. Honestly, do this to your own life. And honestly, you'll see when I'm talking in a minute, apply this to anything that you're doing right now in your own life and see if it suddenly makes it an epic story, right? So, the 12 points of a story. You start in the ordinary world. You're an ordinary person. You're Frodo living in Hobbiton, right? You're Harry living under the stairs. You're Luke Skywalker living with your auntie and uncle, right? Second thing, call to adventure. That doesn't mean an adventure. It means you think that inside you there's something more, right? So whatever you're doing in your life right now, you think, this is not the end. This is something, I could do more than this. But you, of course, you let it, you let it pass because you've got to get on with it, haven't you, right? Maybe there's a startup in me. Maybe there's a book. Maybe I should go and speak to that girl, right? Whatever it is. Then you think you're going to do it, and then point number 3, refusal of the call. You stop. You go, you know what? It's too difficult. I'm not going to do it. Nah. Luke Skywalker turns to Obi-Wan Kenobi and says, I don't want to join the rebels. I'm not interested in this. I just want to live in this farm and be a farmer, right? Maximus says, I don't want to fight. I'm going to go home and see my kid and my wife, right? Like, I just want to farm the land and be every hero and heroine does the same thing, right? Because if you think about what stories are, they're descriptions of transformation. And they're not external transformation. It's not like someone got a haircut. It's internal transformation. They changed as a person. Like Frodo goes to Mount Doom, drops off the ring, but really he grows up. Harry ends the story and he's the dad sending his kid to Hogwarts, right? This is what stories do. So then, at that moment, there's an inciting incident, point number 4. An inciting incident is something that makes you go, right, that's it, right? Think of this in your own life. Like the next job you're going to get, the next wife or girlfriend, or we're always changing wives. But so point number 4, there's an inciting incident. So Luke goes home one day for tea, and his auntie and his uncle have been frazzled by the stormtroopers, right? Maximus goes home, and his wife and kid are hanging up dead, right? Something happens that changes everything. In Fight Club, by the way, this applies to big blockbusters and also French art house movies as well, right? Everything. books, films, even songs. So in Fight Club, he goes back to his IKEA pad and realizes it's burnt down, right? Something happens. Then at that point, you meet someone, a mentor. Usually in a film, it's Morgan Freeman. Usually. Can you imagine being Morgan Freeman's agent? It's like, right, Morgan, we've got another script for you. You're the mentor character. This time to Batman. Right, cool, yeah, I'm up for it. Let's do it. So at that point, you meet a mentor. I thought they were coming to take me away. All right, that's Act 1, end of Act 1, right? At Act 1, the end of Act 1, because of the mentor and because of the inciting incident, there's enough for the audience to believe that this character really would leave the ordinary world and journey into the underworld. Act 2, the beginning of Act 2, you cross the threshold, you leave Hobbit world, whatever it's called. Harry gets on the express, Luke decides to join the bloody Jedis, whatever, right? And just, you can apply it to anything. In Fight Club, he decides to join Project Mayhem, whatever it is, right? And there's a threshold guardian where someone that basically stops you and says, are you ready for this? You go, and this is in your own life, right? Like you want to go and get this new job, it ain't gonna be easy. Then you join, you end up, you land in Narnia, right? Let's just say, right? So you're now out of Kansas, you land. What happens next? You meet allies and enemies. Right? These are the people that are going to be, that they represent different parts of you that will become integrated into you eventually. So you meet the Tin Man who represents that, the heart, and you meet the Lion that represents courage, and you meet and these people will eventually integrate into you. And you really want to talk about the reader or the listener or the watcher. We're not really talking about Dorothy, right? Like, we're just watching, we're growing through her, right? Then you go through the road of trials. Basically, the road of trials is like you suffer, right? And by the way, this is the bit that brands just cannot understand. They're like, so let me just tell you now, if you tell a story and at no point there is no jeopardy and no suffering, it is not a story and you have wasted your money. Fact. If your agency come to you and they go, right, here's the storyboard, this, and this, everyone's happy throughout the whole thing, and Kendall Jenner comes on at the end, and everything's great, and there's a hashtag. It's going to be a bad return on investment, because nobody cares about something that has no jeopardy or downside, because it's just not interesting. Human beings are just not interested in that, because you don't want to see, you need to put the hero or the heroine in a predicament and try and get them out of it. Otherwise, the second half of the whole tale doesn't work, right? Anyway, the road of trials. The road of trials is mastery of new ideas. Kill Bill, she has to go and become a bloody samurai and learn stuff and suffer. Luke has to try and learn the Force. Harry has to learn to do the spells, but it goes wrong. And, Hermione doesn't fancy her. And stuff has to happen, right? Anyway, then you come out and you have basically what's called the all is lost moment. This is another bit that brands just cannot get their head around, because they're so used to the biggest and longest stories that brands have ever told have been 90-second TV spots. So of course you can't tell a story in there. So brands and agencies think they're storytellers. They're not. They're not. They're content creators, and most of the time they're non-tent creators. Nonsense content. It's just going to die. As soon as the media dollars run out, it'll die, because it was never alive in the first place. And so then the all is lost moment. At this point, stuff's got, Bane has broken Batman's back, right? It is bad. It has to be bad at this point. Because at this point you're thinking, how the hell is the hero or heroine going to get out of this? And that's the only reason you come through to Act 3. And in Act 3, you find the golden fleece, or you learn the thing. And at this point you change, because at the all is lost moment, the character, the central hero, kind of like the old version of them, kind of dies. Not dies, but they let a version of themselves go that was the young kid, or the Jon Snow, right? He's a young man, and then someone says, kill the boy, right? They don't mean, obviously, I'm not giving it away, but he hasn't had the easiest time, I admit. But the point is, he becomes a man. That's the theory, right? And every character has to become something more at this moment to move into Act 3. And this is the most amazing bit. In Act 3, what happens when you become that person? Is it just good enough to go, hey, I'm much better than I used to be? No. A hero goes back to the loved ones, to the tribe, and brings everything they've learned back. So Jason brings the golden fleece back. Luke restores order to the galaxy and returns, you return home. And that is called the return. That's the end bit, right? So the point is, and if you think about that from a storytelling point of view, that's what brands need. Act 1 is moving from unknown to known. Unknown to known. It's like consideration, right? Act 2 is moving from essentially being not caring to like mastering a new idea. And Act 3 is becoming an advocate. So you learn something, you come back. If you've learned like how to be a Buddha, you come back and start a school for Buddhas, yeah, and give back. And that's what brands can lay their strategy over the top of that storytelling wheel, and straight away you get amazing work, but they don't even know that it exists. I'm sorry I spoke for so long there, but I hope that answers the question, and I did promise.
I'm just tired of listening.
I'm tired of talking.
You guys? Well, I have to apologize to all of you, but we have to go. But I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did, and please give a round of applause to Mark Adams from Vice Media.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for being with me at Convergence for these 2 days. I really enjoyed this. I feel like all of you guys are my friends, and we're having drinks later, so come meet me. All right, let's go.